Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and finance and career. But more importantly, we address the issue of transitioning out of sport. It's such a major issue today. And we interview former college and professional athletes. We talk about their transition out of sport ultimately into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. And the whole idea is to teach and inspire athletes that there is life after sports. So excited today to have Evan Sleight. How you doing, Evan?
I'm doing fantastic, Rob. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks, and it's a pleasure. So Evan is a baseball player, still playing actually. He played in college, started out at University of Virginia, and then he transferred and played at Rutgers, and then finally ended up as the captain of Alabama. And today he's playing professionally. He's in Brockton, Massachusetts, in the Frontier League. Very excited for him, and it's a big push. We're gonna try to get Evan into affiliated ball.
Hey, love it.
All right, so Evan, talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for me, I was really lucky to have parents that really supported me. My mom owned her own business, so she taught me the value of hard work and putting in the work every single day. And my dad was actually a professional triathlete, and I was lucky enough to be with him every day on the field, um, and just playing football, hockey, and baseball. So I grew up playing three sports. I actually wanted to be a college quarterback for the longest time, but the baseball recruiting trail happens a little bit sooner. So ended up committing for baseball, but I learned a lot of valuable lessons along the way about building structure and dealing with failure, especially in baseball. People call it the game of failure, but in the same sense, it's also the game of opportunity. So it's taught me a lot about bouncing back and understanding that failure is just a part of growth.
Yeah, it's what's the old, you get 3 hits out of 10 in your Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, that's it. I mean, any game where you're failing 70% of the time, you're in for a rude awakening if you're expecting to do better than that. So it was really important for me to just understand what it took to get my body ready every day to play and also play multiple sports. I think that was really big for me. Football was a lot about team building and kind of going through a lot of struggles physically with your team. Hockey was similar, and then baseball was a little bit more mentally.
Now you said you wanted to be a college quarterback, but like as a kid, was there a dream to be a professional athlete? And if so, what sport?
Oh, absolutely. So it kind of toggled between whatever season it was. Growing up in Massachusetts, when it was hockey season, it was a winter. I wanted to be an NHL goaltender. Football season, I wanted to be in the NFL, and then baseball season, I just wanted to play for the Red Sox. So it really just depended what I was doing.
That's good. I always joke around. I said I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, the talent wasn't there, so I do podcasts and I'm an entrepreneur.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Seriously.
No, definitely not. So let's talk about the education of transitioning out of sports. So a lot of times, and mentioned off there too, is that a lot of the athletes that I might have on the podcast might be a little bit older. So you being more closer out of college, were there any classes or workshops, not just like a 1 day thing, but at any of the schools that you went to?
So the unfortunate reality is there absolutely were, but I don't remember them all that well. And I'm someone who pays a lot of attention to classes and stuff like that. It was more about networking, but it was never fully explained how to do it. I would say that we had access to like LinkedIn and Handshake, but other than that, the workshops that we do, I didn't feel engaged enough to the point where it's something kind of held on to me. And that was within 5 years. So as someone who does pay attention, it's hard for me to recall the specifics of what really went on in some of those workshops.
Yeah, and I think it's important that schools do have it, and it seems like most schools really don't. I mean, some of the bigger schools have some semblance of it, and maybe not so much in the smaller schools. But we feel like at Alumni Direct, we've talked about coming in with different resource partners and going into schools and helping them with additional curriculum, and not only for the current athletes, but for the alumni athletes as well. We talk about this all the time, even from a recruiting perspective, is that as a parent with kids, high school athletes, to find the right school for them. And there might be 3, 4 schools that might be similar, but if there's one school that's offering programs, not only for the current athletes when they're in school, but also for alumni athletes, I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I don't think that information is important. I think it's honestly, if I could go back, I wish I could remember better. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what's so important about what you guys are doing with Alumni Direct. I really like how you're taking it from more of like a curriculum standpoint versus I feel like it would be more of like one person would come in and talk about how they wish they would have paid more attention to it when they were still in school. But you know how it is when an athlete's still going through it, you're not really focused on your career being over. And as someone who's still playing, it's taken me a lot of critical thought to even get to where I am as well.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that a little bit later, but it's going to be interesting because you are still playing, kind of getting your perspective on game planning and things like that. So let's talk about networking, connecting. It's so important. Talk about, especially while you're doing it, still playing the game.
So networking has been really fun to me because I went to a high school where there's a lot of people who have achieved some really cool things. It's called Belmont Hill School outside of Boston, and there's people who go on to play all sorts of different sports. So it's been really fun to connect with some of those people to see what they've done with their careers, from anywhere working in the government, professional athletes, owning their own businesses, entrepreneurs, and then also all the people that I've played with through college. I have a pretty large network, and it's really cool to see where people end up because you never really know.
That's true. I think what was interesting too that you brought up about high school, because I think a lot of times as teaching networking, I talk to people is that it's so important, even when you're in high school doing it, because it's just, you never know, like you said, where your teammates are going to end up, their parents, coaches. I mean, I think it's so important. And then even just to be able to do that. And a lot of times people might be intimidated by networking and they might say, what do I have to offer to somebody who's, been around for a long time, somebody older? And a lot of times they'll say it might just be that maybe they want to relive their childhood, their sports, or maybe they've got kids themselves that are playing sports. And so you can always have something that you can offer to help others. And I think that's kind of key in networking is kind of having that pay it forward attitude.
Absolutely. I remember from Belmont Hill, my high school, we'd have a chapel talk every Friday. And a lot of times it was an alumni who was doing something very cool or had found something that they wanted to share, and they'd speak in front of the whole school. So it's a pretty common exercise to hear from alumni, have alumni fairs, and learn a lot about what they were doing. So I think that was absolutely a very useful resource for us. And I do remember in college we had a couple events like that. But a lot of times during the spring is when they happened. We had games. So
Yeah.
it was really challenging for us to be there with our schedule playing 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah, no, I could see it. And how about kind of cross networking with different sports? Is that something that you saw a lot at school, or was it more siloed where the baseball hung with the baseball, football, basketball, etc.?
So I would say, funny enough, the dining hall was a place where you would meet a lot of these other athletes. Now, are those athletes still in school? Yes. So it's not like they have moved on. I would say if you were to have a speaker, it would be from someone, it could be from any sport. Mainly, it would be from baseball. I noticed at Alabama, just with Coach Saban's resources, we had a lot more multi sport networking events, which were really cool. So, yeah, I would say as a baseball player, you're traveling so much that you're just not around a lot of these other athletes, maybe in class. And since COVID, a lot of these classes are online. So it's just not the same as it was even my freshman year, where all the classes were in person and you're in groups and talking to people and getting to know others.
Now, how do you see it today now that you're out of school, but you're still playing professionally? Do you see any more movement, networking with other athletes? Because I mean, I think the key is that you've got a similar DNA, similar skill set might be a little bit different, but I mean, similar. Most of us grew up, I was a runner. I ran cross country track in high school, a little bit in college, but we all played sports, started at a young age. So there's something, that commonality kind of like for school. I see the value of athletes networking across the sports.
I think that value is immense. And I think it's actually the structure that we do so well under is the asset that's extremely undervalued. And part of the reason why people do struggle when their sport does end. So I do think that DNA that we share can be absolutely shared across networks.
No, I think that's great, and definitely encourage it, because a lot of times you're hearing like, you'll see at the games, like the superstar players across sports, or they'll go hang out at a basketball game or football game, whatever sport they're not playing at the time.
Yep.
But you just don't, you want to see it across other areas as well. So let's switch gears and let's talk a little bit about my engagement. So talk about your involvement when you're at the different Virginia, Rutgers, Alabama. What were you seeing as far as the school bringing back athletes? And I'm not just talking about for like a homecoming game or a golf tournament, more so to maybe mentor and work for longer periods of time.
That's a great question. I mean, I'm sure there were times where we did it, but aside from the events, I don't really recall much of specific information being relayed back to us from alumni. And I know they spent a lot of time working on that networking aspect, more so it felt online. And I was in the middle of the COVID experience. So I don't know if things might have changed. But yeah, I mean, at Bama, I remember there was definitely some people that would come back and talk to us. And then obviously alumni would come back to like a first pitch or be recognized on the field or something like that. But other than that, I don't really recall specific events where our team would meet and speak to other alumni.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, and I think some of the challenges. I mean, obviously, they got to be asked to come back. I mean, I always bring up on my podcast, or a lot of times I do. I was on a call myself with a Hall of Fame football player from the University of Delaware, where I went, and then played about 10 years in the NFL. And we talked to the alumni there, the association, just about giving back, and they didn't have the bandwidth. I mean, he said, "Tap me in, I'm ready to help." I mean, same thing for me too, and just didn't really do that. So I think it's so important. I guess the other area too is a lot of times you'll find like the coaches. There's a transition in coaches, transition athletic directors, and I think obviously I guess that probably plays into it as well.
No, that's a great point. I didn't even realize so when I first got to Rutgers, that was a new set of coaches and they did a great job. We had like an alumni like first pitch dinner. So the alumni would come back there, but that was more so that was a networking experience, just more so surrounded around baseball a little more. And then we also obviously you have an alumni game, but a lot of those guys, and then when I was at Bama, that was also the coach's first year there. So it definitely takes a lot of effort to go back and connect with alumni you might not really know. But now that you mentioned that, I absolutely do remember our coaches making it a point to make sure the alumni did feel welcome. Now, when it comes to talking about a job after and your transition after sport, it didn't really feel as much about that. It felt more so just about the sport and relating to their experiences and the cool things that they got to do.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, I don't know if you had a chance to watch any of the other podcasts. So if you didn't, these questions will hit you up. They're easy, but still. If we were to go a little back to the future action here, so we're gonna hop in a DeLorean and we're gonna go back to freshman year at University of Virginia. 10 words or less. What advice would you give to freshman Evan?
Build your own standard. That'd be my advice. And am I allowed to explain it with more than 10 words?
Yeah, sure.
He would understand. My career has just been marked by a lot of reset cycles. When I left UVA, I was a freshman commit. It had become my identity. I got hurt and COVID hit, and they asked me to leave. And for that whole next year, I was really off just because my identity was gone. So even at Rutgers, they gave me a fantastic opportunity. I played every day, but I worked back up, and I got to a place where I thought I was going to get drafted. I didn't get drafted. Same thing happened. I kind of reset and I was down on myself. I went to Alabama. I was lucky enough to be captain, but there was no through line that carried me between those reset periods, those reset parts of my career. And I just really wish I would have built my own standard to carry with me as I went along.
Okay. And then now fast forward to now. So this was good. So now we're traveling along to senior Evan. And I guess
Yep.
we'll land at Alabama. We'll do senior Evan in Alabama. 10 words or less. What advice would you give to him?
I'm going to try to do something different because I could go with the same thing, but I would say lean into your network. I think since it was my last year, I was really just focused on my gameplay, and it kind of actually affected me in a negative way because I just too much of my identity had became about how I was playing, and as the captain and feeling like I was having a little more eyes on me, I kind of let it get to me, and I was trying to be someone that I wasn't. So by leaning into my network and kind of removing myself a little bit from the game, I think it would have allowed me to take that step back and just refocus on having fun and playing like I can.
Yeah, that's a big thing. I think a lot of people have come back and said, I wish that I would have just enjoyed the moment more. Especially, it's I guess it's harder for baseball because, I mean, baseball falls in the spring, so pretty much you're playing baseball and then you're graduating. Whereas, like say the fall or winter sports, they might have that last semester to kind of enjoy that senior experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Graduation was during my season, and there's actually like an athlete specific graduation at Rutgers. So we would like, I don't know if it was after a game, we like hustled into the rack or the Jersey Mike's Arena, and then we graduated, and that was kind of it. And then we went on and we had a game the next day. I think it was a Friday, and then we had a Saturday, Sunday game. So it kind of hits you fast. The only thing you can do is just roll with the punches and not really think about it. I think that's another part. You just, if you take the time to really process what's going on, it's going to take you out of your sport, out of your season. Because I actually remember, I think I went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts on graduation night. I wasn't really locked in, and that's not to say that doesn't happen sometimes, but it's hard. And I'm sure, and I've seen some of your guests have said similar things where it's a lot to process.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. So let's because you've gone through the NIL period, name, image, likeness. I want to kind of get your thoughts, both positive and negative.
Yeah, so I'll take you all the way back. I was actually patient zero COVID transfer. So I entered the portal April of 2020. So at that time, I had gained a hardship waiver. So that was before the COVID transfer thing existed. I actually never thought I was going to transfer before I got to college, but I did, and that's what I had to do. And so it started with the transferring, and I noticed, there were a lot of players leaving from these SEC, ACC schools to fill in other places. Now, I think that has been fantastic because, especially in baseball, the teams have gotten a lot better. Like every game you're playing, these teams are really good. Now, as we progress forward with the schools who have a little bit more money, they have the fund. I think it's getting a little bit dangerous. I do think it's important for athletes they earn what they deserve, but it's creating a question where there's not really a structure that's prepared to handle this. Like as we're seeing in college football, it's kind of becoming the Wild West. You're not going to develop as much, which, in football, guys get hurt and then they miss out on the money that they could have made. I just think it's challenging to ensure that the players are developing in the ways that they probably should be. And not to go on too long, but I also think it's hurting some of these athletes who are the 60 through 80th guys on the roster are still making money. And then when your school and your career ends, I just hope that people are prepared to live a lifestyle that fits their new income. And I know Bama absolutely was working with athletes to do that stuff. It's just it's kind of the Wild West right now.
Yeah, and I think I always talk about it. I think the one negative is one of the negatives is that it's the lack of education. I mean, just knowing that, hey, guess what, you gotta pay taxes, set up an LLC, and so I think it's a wonderful opportunity for athletes to become entrepreneurs at a young age, if done the right way. I mean, obviously, you've got your big time deals, that you hear about it, and that's what everybody thinks of NIL is. I think it's either the big money or the portal are the two things that people, but they're not necessarily looking at even like the swimmers and the soccer players and the runners, the opportunities that they have in NIL deals.
Oh, absolutely. So with my fiance, Brooke, she was the captain of the soccer team in Alabama. Like that team was beloved. Like they went to the College Cup. They were the number 1 team in the country. They were drawing like 10,000 fans for their games, and they all benefited, which I think is really important. Like to be able to have access to those deals and to be paid for your name and your likeness is important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about now. We're going to get into transition out of sport, but first let's talk about, because you're basically, in a sense, you've had one transition so far, going from college to being a professional athlete. So you haven't quite gotten to the other one yet, which is fortunate for you. You still have some time, and we're all rooting for you. So talk about your transition from college to playing professionally.
Yeah, so the league that I'm in, it's a great competition with the lack of minor league teams now. The independent leagues have gotten a lot better, but there's still a lot of structure missing in some of these teams. Like you're basically on your own. So I really noticed that college, you wake up at 6 a.m., you get your lift up, you get your breakfast, you go to lunch, you go to classes, you have practice at this time, you go home, you feel accomplished. Now that structure is gone. And I'm kind of in a similar boat to people whose careers did end because that structure disappears. It's just now it's in my off season. It's during my season. I just need to make sure that I've built that for myself. And And I will say, I am also preparing for the end of my career because everyone's career is going to end. I don't care if you play in the big leagues, you're a Hall of Famer, or it ends after high school. It's going to happen. So, and we'll get into this a little more, but I've been building a standard for myself that allows me to be prepared for when my career ends and also have an identity outside of my sport. That also helps me play better while I'm still in it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, there's some great, great advice there. I hit it at the end with the whole, I call them the nuggets, but I mean, that's great. Cause I mean, you definitely have your head on straight and looking at just, the preparation for the future. And I think that's what we want to teach other athletes is just that you're not just Evan, the baseball player, Rob the runner, Billy, the football player. I mean, you're a person that has many years ahead of you and you need to plan accordingly, which kind of ties into a lot of things that we've been talking about today. So that's good that you're ready for that. So maybe give some words of advice to other athletes as they do come to the end of their career.
Yeah. I mean, I would say if you're planning the end of your career as it's ending, I'd say it's probably too late. I would recommend that they build their own standard, and we'll get into this because this is actually what led me into my entrepreneurial venture. Build your standard before your career is over so that it's not such a shock. Because a lot of these people I know, and we actually ran a 300-person survey, when their careers end, they don't lose the motivation. They still have motivation. They lack the direction. So start building that when you're still in school. Start building it with your parents when you're in high school. The sooner you build it, the better you'll understand it, and it'll be easier to follow.
Yeah, and I would also imagine too, like just when you're in an off season, I guess in a sense you're there from perspective of you got the off season. So these athletes, they're not playing in season, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever the sport is. Like, what are some of the things they could be doing at that point as they kind of gear up for the future?
You're saying in their off season? I'm sorry.
Yeah, like in their off season. I imagine that's probably a good time to start, doing some different types of playing.
Absolutely. So challenge yourself. Like do things that you probably wouldn't want to do. Like it's super easy when you're a professional athlete, a college athlete, to just say, look, this is what I do. This is who I am. I'm just going to attack my career ending when it's done. And I think a lot of people are shocked. It's not the job. They'll find the job. They'll get the work done, but something is missing. So don't wait. You're more than your sport. And by the way, if you do this, you're going to be a better athlete and a better player because you're going to feel like it's not the end of the world when you do have that 0 for 4.
There you go. All righty. So let's talk about as an athlete looking to become an entrepreneur. Talk about that, just like how that kind of sets you up for that.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier, but the structure that you're used to operating within is something that translates super well into business. For me personally, I've always noticed that I function a lot better when I was structured. So when I was comfortable in where I was, when I planned out my days, and I think that translates really well over for an entrepreneur who's trying to do something for others, kind of their own boss. And the better you're able to create that structure or standard for yourself, the better you're going to succeed. I'm obviously still learning. I'm early in the process, but it's translated over pretty well so far.
Yeah, and I would also say, even if an athlete might not go the entrepreneurial route, talk a little bit about how employers see athletes and the value that they bring.
I think the first thing is the communication. When you're on a team and you're around the same people all the time, you have to learn to say the thing that's hard. You have to say the thing that's right, but no one wants to say, because at the end of the day, that's the information that's valuable. If everyone's succumbing to groupthink and everyone's agreeing with each other, it sounds nice and it's easy, but is that necessarily the best thing for the brand or the company or wherever you're working? I think that's a really intriguing and enticing thing for someone hiring athletes. And also, I think their ability to work hard and compete. I think competition is really good. Learning how to lose and do it gracefully and still keep going, I think, is another piece that's very important, because at the end of the day, it's not always going to go as you plan. So if you can hop back up and keep going, it's going to separate you from a lot of other people that might give up.
All right, there we go. We've kind of gone through and started touching on along the way. Evan kept talking about structure, which I'm sure we're going to hear about now. So let's talk about Continuum Standard and what you're trying to build.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as my structure started disappearing, it was kind of getting apparent that something was missing. And so my fiance, Brooke, who actually was going through a transition, she was the captain of the soccer team at Alabama. She was ending her career. So I kind of sat down with her dad, Brad, and it just became so apparent that we needed to do something about this gap for ex-athletes and even athletes like me who are still going through it. So we started with a book. We wrote down our ideas in what we call No More Game Days. And then from there, we took the problems from the book and we tried to solve it in our app. So it's been really cool because, we ran a 300-person survey and we noted that 69.6% of athletes that we surveyed said they lost their daily structure within 12 months. And that was something we felt. Brad told you his story. I can give you a little bit. 30 years ago, he kind of went through something similar that I'm going through and ex-athletes are going through. So it was something we felt and we confirmed it. So that's when we got to the book. And from there, we went to the app.
All right. So now let's talk about what's the app all about? Like how does it help athletes?
Yeah. So the app is used to build 4 fence posts. And those fence posts are mindset, movement, fuel, and rest. So if you can build those 4 fence posts, you're going to be able to take care of the majority of everything that you did when you were an athlete. Like I said before, you wake up in the morning, you get this done. You got to do this. You got to do that. That's gone when your career ends. No one's forcing you to do anything. You go work, but that's not for you anymore as much. Unless you're an entrepreneur doing your own thing. This is about building your standards so that you can build an identity for yourself that is outside of your work and so that people know who you are. You said you were Rob the runner. I was Evan the baseball player. I first felt that when I left UVA. I'm like, I'm not Evan the UVA baseball player anymore. And that took me a year to get over. I just want to help athletes understand that the structure they have in college is all they need to build for themselves something that's going to be very fulfilling.
That's great. And so basically by utilizing the app, it's just kind of bringing back that structure, building the game plan to just succeed in the future.
Yeah. So we have an onboarding that basically customizes all of those 4 fence posts for you to eliminate drift and help stop people from restarting. So when you complete your day, we call it a 1 day. You win your day. And if you don't, you start drifting and it makes you aware of that. You can track your nutrition. You got your custom workouts. You got your mindset piece. And then you also have the rest piece, which is actually really important for athletes because I know personally, I would just go. You get hurt, you get sick. The rest is just as important too.
So is it something that athletes use just short term? Is it something they do long term? What's your thoughts on that?
No, this is something that athletes should be able to use through their career. So I mentioned a through line that I wish I had. This is the through line for athletes, okay? And we're starting with college athletes because it is. I mean, it's obviously something that you're targeting too. Something just missing. I've had a cool opportunity to just reach out to all the guys that I know and girls that play college sports, and they just feel off. They get home at night and they don't feel like their day was theirs. So we just want to help people get that back. And if this is done right, like, it should almost be boring. Like, you go in, you get your stuff done. We're not gamifying it. Like, we're keeping it simple, focusing on the aspects that need to be done for operators, and from there we can help them build their identities.
Okay, and then is it just a phone app, or is it something that they can do on the computer as well?
Yeah, right now it's just a phone app. We do have our website as well for people who are interested. It's continuumstandard.com. But we also have our books. Our books are kind of the foundation and lay out the problems and talk about loved ones and people we know that went through the same experiences that we did. And that kind of just lays it out.
Okay, great. So you mentioned the website. Where else can they find you?
They can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Continuum Standard, and they can find us at our website, continuumstandard.com.
Okay, great. And you can find us at alumnidirect.com, and the podcast is on our YouTube channel as well as across all the different networks, Spotify, Apple. And this has been great. I mean, each week we talk about, again, athletes transition out of sport, and just it's such a difficult thing. I mean, some people are fortunate and they handle it better than others, but we want people to reach out. People don't be afraid to ask for help. There's people out there that want to help in doing different apps like Continuum Standard, Alumni Direct. Just there's things out there to help athletes out. We encourage them to do it. We always say we want to help at least one person, but again, great nuggets, as I call them, from Evan today. And Evan, this has been wonderful. We really appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me on, and for what you're doing for athletes is huge. We need more people like you to pay attention to their careers after their sports end.
Yeah, it's been a true pleasure.